A warm welcome to the 43rd webinar in the series of Techspert Expo webinars. These are the webinars organized as part of the ongoing Techspert Knowledge Expo, one of our flagship events of the year 2021. And today's webinar is also hosted by one of our sponsors, Grundfos Pumps. The agenda for today is as follows. We'll start with a welcome note by our founder, Murugeshan sir, followed by a keynote presentation on the topic of energy optimization of pumps through best engineering practices by our keynote presenter, Mr. Maruti Jadhav, who is an assistant manager for energy audits at Grundfos Pumps India Limited. That will be followed by a question and answer session and vote of thanks. Techspert was found with a vision to organize the world's technology experts onto a single network to enable sharing of knowledge. And with this vision, we have had over close to 130 knowledge sharing events, webinars, seminars, industry visits, and we have also launched first of its kind Expo, a platform. So while thanking Murugeshan sir for founding such a fantastic platform and taking such wonderful initiatives, I would request sir to start today's session with a welcome note. Murugeshan sir.
Good evening, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you all for Techspert Knowledge Expo webinar number 43. Today's presentation is on energy optimization of pumps through best engineering practices by Mr. Maruti from Grundfos Pump. Yes, he is a subject matter expert in this field with very good experience. In Techspert webinars, we have done so many topics on electrical subjects so far. Based on the many requests from our Techspert members, we thought that we need to concentrate on other engineering subjects also, that is mechanical, civil, and other things. In that sense, we requested Grundfos Pumps, the leading manufacturer of pumps in India, to present on today's subject. Thanks to Mr. Mano, Mr. Gopinath, and Mr. Maruti for your cooperation and for your efforts to make this happen today. Thanks to all the participants for your participation today. And with this, I request Shravan to take over further and proceed. Thank you all. Shravan, over to you.
Thank you for the welcome, sir. So members will move on to the main topic for today, and that's the keynote presentation on the topic of energy optimization of pumps through best engineering practices. And our keynote presenter today is Mr. Maruti Jadhav. Before requesting Maruti sir to share the screen and proceed with the keynote, I would like to briefly introduce sir. Maruti sir is a chemical engineer by education, and he is an alumni of TKIET, Shivaji University, Kolhapur. And he's also a certified energy auditor from Bureau of Energy Efficiency. Sir has worked with Johnson Controls, Thermax, Unilever as energy auditor before and have experience of utility audit in industry as well as commercial buildings. Sir joined Grundfos Pumps India Private Limited as assistant manager energy audits in 2018 and at present located in Pune and responsible for energy audits for commercial buildings across India. So with that brief background about our keynote presenter today, Maruti sir, I request you to share your screen and proceed with the presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Is my screen visible now?
Yes, I think it is yet to load, but we are just waiting for it. Yes, we can see that. Yeah, please proceed.
Okay. Good evening, all. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to discuss on the energy optimization techniques for the pumps as well as pumping system. While going through this topics, if you have any questions, we request you to mention your questions in the chat box so that we can answer it later in total. So moving ahead, our agenda is why energy optimization is required, what is the need. Then we'll discuss about the pump terminology, what are the terms are used for defining the pumping efficiency and all. Then why the pumps operate inefficiently. What are the major reasons why we are not getting the required efficiency in the pumps? We will discuss about those reasons. Then we will discuss about some energy saving tips, common energy saving tips. And lastly, we will go through the pump audit process, how it is conducted and how it can benefit us. Moving ahead, energy optimization is today's need. Why?
Maruti sir, if you don't mind, I would like to interrupt you here. Can you switch off your video, please? Looks like there is some issue with your bandwidth.
Because energy cost, yeah. Okay.
Maruti
Yeah,
sir,
sure.
there is, yeah, sure. So kindly switch off your video and try again, sir. Let us try because your bandwidth is pretty low. We can't hear you properly. Try now, sir, please.
Okay.
No, you can start from the second
Is
slide.
it now voice is clear now?
Yeah, voice is
Yeah,
clear,
this
sir.
one.
You can start with the next
So,
slide. Yeah.
okay. So I will once again go through the agenda. We'll discuss about the why energy conservation is required. Then we'll discuss about the pump terminology. Then the reasons for inefficiency in the pumping systems. Common energy saving tips for the achieving energy savings, and energy audit process on pumping system, how it is conducted. So energy optimization is today's need, and why it is required, because energy cost forms about 10 to 15% of total operating cost of any product or any building. And day by day, we see the utility prices are increasing, so it increases the operating cost directly, and the tariffs are also increasing. So to reduce the operating cost or to control the operating cost, first we should focus on the energy cost, because it corresponds to 10 to 15% of the total operating cost. And also for social cause, or we can say to reduce the global warming impact, also we need to save the energy so that we can reduce the global warming effect or environmental effect. What will be the benefits if we do this? First is, as discussed, reduces operating cost. Then it improves the profitability and enhances cost competitiveness. So let's say example, we are manufacturing a certain product, and the operating cost, or we can say in energy cost, is 20% of the product cost. And if we reduce up to 17 or 18% of the product cost, our profits get increased. So also we can compete with our competitors based on the product price, as we have reduced energy cost as well as operating cost. So it is directly related to our operations as well as business. So energy optimization is need of the day to day. Speaking about the pumps are used for every application. Let's say if we are operating in we are in the industry, pumps are required for all the utility purposes, HVAC system, cooling tower systems, process pumps or process cooling as well. And in commercial building, it is required for the HVAC as well as water treatment plant and dewatering systems as well. And based on the data collected from the global organization, 10% of the world's electricity consumption is consumed for pumps, and 9 out of 10 pumps in operation are not optimized for their application and therefore waste the energy. So more or less 80 to 90% of the pumps are eligible for the energy saving by modification in the pump or in the system. How to achieve that, we'll discuss one by one. Before that, we'll understand the pump performance, how to assess the pump performance, and what are the terminologies associated with it. As we are aware, pump is designed based on flow and head. So flow is nothing but the amount of water that is transferred in given period of time, and it can be measured in many units like meter cube per hour, GPM, LPS, or liter per minute, etc. First, we need to check in which unit we need to measure the performance. So for calculating the efficiency, we need to, if we are taking the flow in GPM, we need to consider head in feet. So first we need to finalize the units. And pump head. Pump head is nothing but the differential pressure across the pump, and it is the summation of static head as well as dynamic head. So we'll discuss about static head and dynamic head. Static head is what? Static head is nothing but the height up to which the pump has to transfer the liquid. So in this example, the static head is nothing but the this is negative suction case, and here the static head would be the difference between the two water levels, and it will be summation of suction static lift plus discharge static head. So static this will be the total static head. And if we consider the positive suction head, the total static head would be the difference between two water levels from the pump center line. So total static head would be the discharge static head minus suction static head. This will give us the total static head. So first we need to calculate, while designing the pump, we need to calculate the static head first and then dynamic head, and then we can design the pump head. If the system is closed loop, let's say example, it's a HVAC system, primary and secondary system, and it's closed loop, there we can consider static head as 0. And in that case, only dynamic head needs to be taken into account, and which consists of frictional losses across the pipeline as well as walls, vents, strainer, NRV, footwall, and equipment. The pressure loss across the equipment is the most important factor to be considered while designing the pump. So while selecting the pump, we need to consider both static head as well as dynamic head. And how we measure that? Once we install the pump at site, then how we can check at which head the pump is operating? We measure the differential pressure across the pump, and from pressure, how we calculate the head? There is standard formula to calculate the head. It's nothing but head is equal to pressure in Pascal in numerator, and in denominator we need to take into account liquid density and acceleration due to gravity in meter per second. If we apply this formula for water, let's say example, water is at 1 Pascal, and its density is 1000 meter cube per kg per meter cube, and acceleration of gravity is 9.81 meter per second. We can get the empirical relation, like for water, 1 bar of pressure is equal to 10 meters of head. So this we all of know 1 bar differential pressure corresponds to 10 meters of head. It arises from this formula. Again, if we are not using water, we are using for another liquid, we are using pump for another liquid, then how to correlate the pressure and head? There is another formula. Head in meters corresponds to actual pressure in bar multiplied by 10 divided by specific gravity. So here we can see the 3 examples. One is with kerosene, water, and brine. Since water specific gravity is 1, whatever the pressure is 3 kg per cm square, or 3 bar, corresponds to 3 into 10, 30 meters of head. And if we consider the kerosene, since the specific gravity is low, though the pressure gauge is showing 2.4 bar reading, it corresponds to 30 meters of actual head, 30 meters of water column. And for brine, since the specific gravity is 1.2 higher, though the pressure gauge is showing 3.6 bar pressure, we cannot say it's a 36 meter of water column. Actually, it's 30 meter, because we need to consider specific gravity. So this is the formula for calculating the head. When we measure the differential pressure across the pump, we need to take into account specific gravity as well. For water, we can straight away say if differential pressure is 2 bar, we can say it's a 20 meters of water column differential pressure, or 20 meters of head available, or 20 meters pump is operating at 20 meters of head. If it is for other liquid, we need to take into account specific gravity as well to calculate the or to check the exact head at which the pump is operating. Another terminology related with pump operation is net positive suction head. What is net positive suction head? It's nothing but minimum absolute pressure or head required at pump suction to avoid the cavitation. And when cavitation occurs due to vaporization of liquids, and vaporization occurs because if the absolute pressure is lower than the vapor pressure of liquid, it starts to vaporize. And vapor pressure is nothing but the pressure at which liquid starts to vaporize at constant temperature, and vapor pressure varies with the temperature. So if we take the water at 100 degrees centigrade, it will start to vaporize at 1 bar absolute pressure. And if it is at 50 or 25 degrees centigrade, it will start to vaporize at minus 0.8 bar absolute pressure. So unless we apply vacuum for the water at 25 degrees centigrade, it will not vaporize. So we need to consider the vapor pressure with reference to temperature. And it's always recommended to operate the pump, or we can, or in other terms, the NPSH available at site should always greater than the NPSH required at that duty parameter. NPSH required is specified by the pump manufacturer in pump datasheet as well as pump curve, and it varies from duty point to duty point. That we'll see in the typical pump curve. But NPSH available at site should always greater than the NPSH required than the pump, else the pump will start to vaporize. So how to calculate the NPSH available at site? There is formula. It is calculated by atmospheric head plus minus static head. We will add the static head if it is a positive suction, and we will deduct the static head if it is a negative suction, minus HF. HF is nothing but the head loss due to friction in the pipeline, and HV is nothing but head loss due to vapor pressure. So how we calculate the static head? By measuring the difference between the water level and pump center line. That would be the static head. Head loss due to frictional losses, we calculate it by using the formulas, by taking into account the pipe size as well as pipe roughness and pipeline length. And head loss due to vapor is calculated by calculated with reference to temperature of the liquid. So always make sure if NPSH available at site is lesser than the NPSH required, we need to take into account the pipeline size, or we can say the water level. If it is lesser than NPSH required, we can vary the only two factors, that is frictional loss or static head. We'll check whether it is possible to increase the static head, or let's say example, we are taking water from tank. Is it possible to increase the water level in the tank? If no, then we should look at whether we can reduce the frictional losses, because at most of the sites we have came across the situation, because of lower pipeline size at pump suction, the pump tends to cavitate, because since the pipeline size is lower, the water velocity increases, and hence the frictional losses increases and NPSH available reduces. So always recommended to use properly sized pipelines for the pump suction, so that the frictional losses would be minimum and NPSH available at the site will be maximum, and we can avoid the cavitation in the pumps. Another term related with the pump performance is power. Power is the main input for the driving the pump, and it is measured in kilowatt, and it depends on the flow and head. As flow and head increases, power consumption increases. So we'll discuss about the pump curve. We come across with the pump curve, and we'll discuss in detail. There are four curves available. First is Q and H. This is relation between flow and head. Here we can see as the head decreases, the flow increases, and vis-a-vis, as head increases, the flow reduces. In most of the cases, what happens? Pump gets designed at higher head. Let's example, if it is is designed at 50 meter cube per hour at 50 meters head, and if actual site head is 40 meters, it will operate at higher flow at 70 meter cube per hour. And this curve is for the efficiency. So if our duty point shifts to left hand side of the curve, it directly impacts on the pump efficiency. As duty point shifts to the left side of the curve, efficiency drops. And if duty point shifts to the right hand side of the curve, there is another impact comes into the picture regarding the NPSH. So if you consider the NPSH curve, at the design point, the NPSH required is 30 meters. And if this pump operates at lower head, let's say example, it operates at 35 meters of head, the NPSH required increases directly to 5 meters. So our NPSH available at site should be more than 6 or 7 meters. And if sufficient NPSH is not available at site, pump will start to cavitate. And at that time, what we do, we reduce the since the pump is operating at a higher flow and it is cavitating, we try to throttle the valve and we reduce the flow to bring the duty point in the required zone, or we can say required NPSH zone, or to get the required flow, which affects the system performance. How it affects, that we'll discuss one by one. And we always need to make sure the pump should be selected at best efficiency point. And while if we install the new pump, and if we need to check at which duty parameter pump is operating, we can simply check the pump head by differential pressure installing across the pump, and we can check the respective flow at which the pump is operating. Let's say example, pump is designed for 42 meters, and if it is operating at 50 meters of head, here we can correlate it that the pump is operating at 50 meters of flow, 50 meter cube per hour flow at lower efficiency than the design, and it is consuming 8 or 8.5 kilowatt of power. So till this point, are there any questions? So that we can move to next.
So there is one question.
Yeah.
So there is one question which is from Mr. Rajesh Kumar, which is how to check friction losses in running pump.
So there are standard formulas available, which we can share it later. For that, we need to consider the pipeline size, pipeline length, number of bends, number of walls, and pipe roughness factor. Based on that, we can calculate the frictional losses for that flow. Also, we need to take into account at which flow we are calculating the frictional losses, because there is a relation. More the flow, more will be the frictional losses. Lesser the flow, lesser will be the frictional losses. If we are calculating for fixed flow, we can use that. But if we are calculating for the variable flow, we need to consider the maximum flow required through that pipeline.
Thank you, sir. And then there's next question from Mr. Humesh Shaikh. So how to calculate or know the pump head of a running pump?
We can check it by installing the pressure gauges at pump suction as well as discharge. And head is nothing but the differential pressure across the pump. So at discharge, if the pressure is 4 bar, and at suction if it is a 2 bar, we can the differential pressure is 2 bar. So the actual head would be 20 meters of water column. And if it is a negative suction, let's say example, discharge pressure is 1.5 bar and suction pressure is minus 0.2 bar, it will be 1.5 minus, it will become plus 1.7 bar will be the differential, which is nothing but 17 meters of water column head.
Thank you, sir. Next question is from Jerome, sir. So can you explain how static head is 0 in closed loop systems?
Because if let's consider the pump is in off condition, the water in the pipeline will be intact, whether if it is at ground floor or if it is at the 10th floor, the water will be stagnant as it is, and pump need to just flow circulate the water through the pipeline. Hence, the static head would be nil in closed loop system. And let's example, we are operating cooling tower pump. The cooling tower installed at terrace at 10th floor and pump is installed at basement. In that case, the static head would be cooling tower basin water level and the cooling tower inlet water level. That would be the only static head.
Thank you, sir. Those were all the questions on the chat window. So members, request you to post your questions on chat window. So whenever Maruti sir will request for addressing the questions, I'll read out your question. So I think we have just one more question from Mr. Rajesh Kumar. So we are having a 30-meter building, our chilled water circulation loop system. We are not getting flow in third floor. What could be the problem and how to address it?
Can you repeat once again?
So they have a 30-meter building and
Okay.
their chilled water circulation loop system, that is the system that they have, and they're
Okay.
not getting flow in third floor. What could be the problem and how to address it?
Flow means they are not getting the required flow, or they are not getting the flow at all.
Mr. Rajesh, would you want to unmute and clarify that question?
We are having a 30-meter building loop system chill water. So whenever we are operating the chill water pump, so we are getting the complaint from the production team. So we are not getting the flow in the third floor of that condenser. So every time it is happening, and we are switching on the second pump. So we are having 3 pumps in this system.
Okay.
So actually, what is the problem? We are having 3 pumps. 2 is running regularly. 1 is the standard. But because of this problem, we are running the 3 pumps continuously.
Okay. It is a condenser pump, right, sir?
No, sir. It is a chill water circulation pump. Secondary pump.
Secondary pump.
Secondary pump.
Sir, if it is a closed loop system, we need to check the flow requirement of that equipment and whether we have supplied the properly sized line to that equipment by considering the required velocity.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you,
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. I think we can proceed further, sir. We'll come back to the questions once next time. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So now we've seen the QH curve, and we will see the impact if the duty point shifts from the best efficiency point. What it impacts on the pump performance. If the duty point shifts to left hand side of the curve, or we can say the pump operates at lower flow and higher head than the design, there are so many there are effects on the pump like lower impeller life, discharge recirculation, suction recirculation, lower bearing and still life, because we are operating the pump at near about the shut off condition. Our pump tends to run in churning condition if unless it is equipped with the VFD. And if, let's example, the pump is designed at certain head and the pump is operated at the lower head, it tends to first is cavitation and lower bearing and still life. So it's always recommended to operate the pump within the 80% to 110% of the capacity of the flow and at best efficiency point. If the duty point shifts to any other reason, the pump performance deteriorates, or we can say the pump efficiency drops. So why pump before that, we'll go through the formula, how we calculate the overall system efficiency. This is the general formula: hydraulic power divided by motor input power. Hydraulic power is calculated by a simple fluid mechanics formula, rho G QH, and from that the formula is arrived to calculate the hydraulic power in kilowatt, and it takes into account actual flow in meter cube per hour, actual head in meters, specific gravity divided by 367. This gives the hydraulic power in kilowatt. This 367 factor is arrived from the unit convergence of the flow density and specific acceleration due to gravity and specific gravity. And we need to divide this hydraulic power by actual power consumption, and it gives us the system efficiency of the pump. If we mention here the pump input power, it will give us the pump power, pump efficiency. But practically, we cannot measure the pump input power, that is motor output. We always measure the overall pump plus motor efficiency by measuring the motor input power. Now next, we tell yes, our pumps are not working efficiently. So what are the major reasons for inefficiency in the pumps? We will go one by one. First is improper selection. We need to always select the pump at best efficiency point. Let's say example, we are designing the pump, and here we can see this pump is selected at 77% of the efficiency, and this pump is selected at 69% of the efficiency. Here we can say we have selected the pump at 8% lower efficiency. So while designing the pump, first we need to finalize the flow and head. First establish flow, how much flow is required, then calculate the head by calculating static head and dynamic head. At that static head is anyway it will be constant, but for calculating the dynamic head, first finalize the flow, and that flow calculate the dynamic head. Once we establish flow and head, select the pump at best efficiency point, so we can avoid the energy losses in our system. Next common example is over design. Whenever we design the new pump, we take into account so many safety margins. If our requirement is 80 meter cube per hour, our consultant designs at 85, then our contractor designs at 90, and then the pump gets these are the common general practice. The pump gets designed at high flow and high head, and what happens? We need to operate the pump by throttling the valves. These are the particular sites where the pump suction as well as delivery valves were throttled due to oversizing at design stage. This pump was designed at much higher head than the actual head required. So we need to operate the head, operate the pump by throttling the valve, and this by throttling the valves, we are nothing but creating the artificial head on the pump, thereby increasing the power consumption of the pump. Another common reason is old and inefficient. So at many of the facilities, there are pumps which are more than 10 or 15 years of old. By over the period of time, due to technology enhancement and technology modifications, energy efficient pumps are developed, and which are more efficient than the older design. Let's say in common practice, we can say take example of our car or bike, which was used to give lower mileage in year of 2000, and now if we consider that brand or that car or bike, we are getting more mileage. So the same applies for here as well. Due to technology enhancement, the efficiency increases for that design condition. This is one of the examples where we replaced the 20 years of old pump, and which was operated at 25% of efficiency. This pump was of capacity with motor 37 kilowatt, and we replaced it with a motor of 22 kilowatt. So always check, are there any technological advancement available with this application or with this pump or any equipment, not for only pump but for boiler as well, for chillers, for cooling towers. For boiler also, there are so many technology upgradations happened by installing condensing economizer. For chillers, there are now chillers which comes with the variable speed, which directly reduces the specific power consumption of chiller at lower loads. So always check out for the technological advancement, whether we can save the energy by using the latest technology. Another common reason is improper piping layout. As discussed while discussing about the net positive suction head, always check whether the pipeline is properly designed or not. If the pipeline is undersized, it it results in the higher frictional losses. Therefore, the pump gets designed at higher head. And we have come across the such scenarios where a customer wanted to increase the pump capacity with the same same by using the same pipeline. Then we calculated the head with the existing pipeline and proposed new design pipeline, and we calculated the power required for that flow with the existing under design pipeline and properly designed pipeline. There was a difference of 30% difference in the power consumption. So let's example, with the existing pipeline, we needed the power of around 100 kilowatts, and with newly designed pipeline, we needed power of only 65 to 70 kilowatts. So there was a direct energy saving just by changing the pipeline size. So always always look for the pipeline sizes, whether the pipeline is designed for design as per the our flow requirement and best as per the best engineering practices. So this is a general thumb rule for inlet. At pump inlet, the water velocity should be 1 to 1.5 meter per second, and for pump discharge, the velocity should be 2 to 3 meter per second. And also for pump suction, always use eccentric reducer with the as per the guidelines given by the pump supplier. So whether this reducer to be kept at top or bottom based on the suction condition, for always check with the guidelines. If it is with the negative suction, the right placement would be like this. The bend should be from the below. And we discuss about the inefficiency in the pumping system, and now we will discuss about the how we select the pump or buy the pump. We purchase or get the pump based on the purchase price, but actually it corresponds only 5% of what 5% of the pump life cycle cost, because the purchase price corresponds to 5% of life cycle cost, service and maintenance corresponds to 10% of the cost, and electrical energy consumption corresponds to 85% of the pump life cycle cost. So if we select the pump or purchase the pump which is costing lower, but if it consumes the higher electricity than the costlier pump, the overall pump cycle life cycle cost will be higher, though its purchase price is low. So always take into account, reveal all financial aspects of the pump operations by focusing on service maintenance costs as well as electrical costs. Then pump system economy must be evaluated from a life cycle cost perspective. So once we think from the life cycle cost of perspective, we can select the optimally sized or optimally priced pump for our operations. And in this way, all direct and indirect costs are related to pump operation and services are minimized. So always look for the life cycle cost whenever you not only for the pump but for any equipment, check for the life cycle cost, and then go for the project installation or procurement stage. So it will save our money in future. Not it will be costlier for us for now because we are purchasing costlier affair, but it will save our money in future, and it will give us a peace of mind. So we'll discuss about some energy saving tips, common energy saving tips. First is proper selection and operation of the pump. Always select the pump close to the best efficiency point. Use 2 or more smaller pumps instead of one larger pump so that excess capacity pump can be turned off. There are several applications. Let's example, we are using the pump for process cooling, or we can say for industry process cooling, and in hotel we are using pump for domestic water. The flow requirement varies over the period of time, over the 24 hours of period. At some time there will be maximum flow requirement, and at some time there will be minimum flow requirement. So if we use only one pump at higher flow as well as lower flow, as we've seen at pump curve, If you operate the pump at lower flow, the efficiency will be dropped down. So instead, check whether we can design the pumps according to the requirement by installing a smaller capacity of pumps based on your requirement, minimum, moderate, and maximum. We can save a lot in pumping system and use high efficiency I3 and above motors for pump drives. Now we have come up with the I5 technology motors as well that we will discuss separately in next session that will be covered by my colleague Frederick. And common practice for saving in energy is speed control pumps for variable applications. Because how we save the energy? Let's say example, we have designed one pump at Q nominal at 3 bar, and our flow requirement decreases. Let's say example, due to variable flow. If we don't install the VFD, what we do, or in operation, what happens? We just throttle the valve, and we shift the duty point from over the pump curve, QH curve, and since we are creating the artificial head, it requires, or we can say excess pressure, it requires energy to operate the pump at higher head. So how we save the energy? Let's say example, we have selected one pump, installed one pump for capacity 20 meter cube, 21 meter cube per hour at 120 meters of head. At this duty point, the pump will consume 10.2 kilowatt hour. Let's say example, our requirement has reduced, and we have not installed the VFD, and we throttle the valve. We have reduced the flow to 10 meter cube per hour because our requirement has reduced from 21 to 10, and we have throttled the valve. The head will increase from 120 to 142 meters of head, and this pump will consume 7.5 kilowatt of power. And suppose we install the VFD and pump operates at constant head. What will happen? As our flow requirement reduces, the pressure will increase, and VFD will slow down the pump speed to match the pump discharge pressure up to 12 bar, that is 120 meters of head, and it will reduce the flow, reduce the speed, and it will deliver the flow 10 meter cube per hour at 120 meter head, that is at constant head, and this pump will consume 6 kilowatt hour. What we have done, the pump has reduced the speed by 10%, and the speed is reduced, and pump is delivering the required flow at the constant head with the lesser power consumption. So this is how we save the energy by installing the VFD on the pump wherever variable flow requirements are, variable flow demand is there, or without which we can operate the pump at constant flow at variable head also for the application like RO. Because if you install the RO system, over the period of time, this RO membrane or RO filter tends to clog. So as over the period of time, the head increases. But while designing the pumps are designed at higher head, considering the clogging of the filters. But when we start the system, pump operates at a very lower head, and in that, and if the pump is operating without VFD, pump tends to deliver more flow at higher power. So in that case, we just throttle the valve. Instead, we can install the VFD and we set the constant flow through the membrane. So if as the membrane clogging increases, pump can increase the speed to operate the pump at higher head and at constant flow. So this is how we can save the energy by installing the VFD on variable flow as well as variable head conditions. So till this point, are there any questions so that we can move to next?
Yes, sir. There are a few questions.
Yeah.
Let me read it out for you. So
Yeah.
in VFD operated pumps, you had mentioned to design at maximum flow. What happens to best efficiency point when VFD operated at lower flow? I think that point you just explained, right, sir?
Yeah, just now I explained that.
Oh,
So what happens if we reduce the speed, the pump curve also shift to the lower side of the zone. Here we can see the pump curves at variable speed. 100%, 90%, 80%. Also, this efficiency curves also change as per the pump speed. So, and common thumb rule is we explained about the installing two or more pumps if the requirement is variable changing over the period of time. VFD, through VFD also we can save the energy, but for we can say the variation from 50% to 100% of the flow capacity.
Thank you, sir. Next question is that was a question from Mr. Jerome Lobo, and the next question is from Mr. Firoz Khan. Will it be better if you use VFD with large pump instead of two or more smaller pumps, the way you explained in previous slide? Yeah.
So it depends on the flow requirement over the period of time. If our flow requirement keeps changing drastically, let's say example, in morning my requirement is 20 meters per hour, and in evening my requirement is 70 or 80 meters per hour. We cannot operate the same pump for 20 meters as well as 80 meters per hour, right? So in that case, what we can do is install 3 pumps of capacity 30 meters per hour each. And if our requirement is varying from only 50 to 80 meters per hour, we can use only one pump, because the pump will be operating from 50% to 100% of the capacity. So it depends on the how your variation is, how your demand is varying over the period of time.
Thank you for that, sir. There's one more question from Mr. Sharana Baswa. So we installed 3 into 30 kilowatt condenser pumps with 1710 GPM design, but system not getting design flow rate and pump getting negative pressure. Cooling tower bin is 1 meter height from the pump level. What is the reason not to get the design flow rate? So this is the question.
Since the pressure is negative, it directly indicates the pumps are cavitating. So first check for whether the cooling tower header is properly designed as per the flow requirements, and pump individual structure lines are designed as per the pump flow requirement. If these pumps, if the individual line sizes are lower than the design, it impacts on the frictional losses and pump cavitates. And due to cavitation only, we cannot get the required flow from the pump.
So thank you, sir. Next, one more question from Mr. Saurav Bose. Is it correct manner to increase pump head by throttling discharge valve as per demand?
As per demand, actually, it's not recommended. But if we are we'll take here 2 cases. First one is with the constant flow, and if there is a constant flow, we can straight away go for the impeller trimming, and we can reduce the head for that pump. But at the same time, check how much flow is also reducing with the impeller trimming. And if it is a variable flow requirement, then it's always recommended to go for the VFD. So it depends on how is your flow requirement, whether it is constant or variable. So accordingly, we need to take a call.
Sure. Thank you, sir. I think those were all the questions. So members, keep posting your questions. I'll call out your name once sir will open the room for the question and answers. So you can proceed further, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you very much all till this slide. Now we will discuss about how Grundfos helps the customer by doing the pump audits. So as a Grundfos India, we are doing pump audits since 2006, and till that we have done more than 2,000 pump audits across the India in industry as well as commercial buildings. So we'll quickly go through our procedure, how we do the audits. First, we do the preliminary audit, then we do detailed audit, we submit the final report, we implement the project, and also we assess commissioning as well as servicing of the pumps. So before doing the detailed audit, we do the preliminary audit and collect the basic data about how many pumps are there, what is the capacity, what are the pump sizes, or we can say the motor capacity, what is the application, and what are the operating hours. Based on that, we segregate the pumps for doing the audit. Let's say, example, at facility there are 50 pumps, and if our customer is want to focus only on 5 to 6 pumps, which the customer thinks those are operating at lower efficiency, we select those pumps only for doing the audit, so that the time as well as resources would be optimized from customer side as well as from the Grundfos side. Also, we segregate the pumps based on the operating hours. We select the pumps for which operates at least for 8 to 10 hours in a day, so that if we want to replace the pump, the payback should be within our requirement, right? Then we go for the detailed audit based on the customer confirmation. First, we have shortlisted the pumps. Then we do the flow measurement, power measurement, and flow, head, and power with our tools. Then we discuss the data with the customers, and we discuss about various parameters. We discuss about the design condition and actual condition, and and we finalize the parameters. Based on that, we calculate the existing pumping system efficiency. We do the data analysis and we submit the report along with the recommendation with or without piping modification as per the customer's requirement. And we submit our final report. This will comprise of all executive summary, existing as well as new system layout, detailed calculations, offers, and sum up. And we have these sets of instruments. We use our calibrator, ultrasonic flow meter, power meter, and pressure gauges. Pressure gauges are used for head and power for the measuring the power, and flow for the flow meter for the flow. And these are the customers. So are there any questions till now, so that we can move to next session of new generation hydro system?
Sure, sir. I think there are a couple of questions which I'll read it out for you. So this is from Mr. Prakash. So in order to reduce the load on motor, is it suggestible to throttle the suction or discharge valve?
It is suggested to throttle only discharge valve, not suction valve. Because if we throttle the suction valve, it will impact on the pump suction head, or we can say NPSH available, and the pump may cavitate in that condition if we throttle the suction valve also.
Sure, thank you, sir. Next question is from Mr. Saurav Bose. What is the recommended rating of pump and motor selection? I mean, are you okay with this question, or you want more clarity, sir?
No, I need more clarity, sir.
Okay, so Mr. Saurav, can you unmute yourself and clarify this question, please?
Yes. When we are selecting motors and pumps, what is the criteria? What we have to think? Means we are required to 20 meter cube of flow and 20 meter head. So we are selecting 20 meter cube flow and 20 meter head, or more than the rating. What is the recommended from the manufacturing?
So if our requirement, we have calculated the requirement, we suggest to add some margin, not more, some margin like 5%, etc., or 10%, based on the customer's discussion or customer's suggestions, and we suggest the customer to select the pump accordingly.
Thank you, sir. So there were other couple of questions also, thanks to Dina from your team who has responded. But I'll just read it out for the sake of others who couldn't check the chat window. So there was a question which was asked, what is the difference between butterfly valves and balancing valves? So of course, would you also want to explain that, sir?
Butterfly valves and
balancing valve. Yeah.
I think Dina has responded that.
Yes, yes, she's responded. Just in case if others who couldn't check the chat window, just wanted to make sure we cover all those questions here. Okay, the response from Dina was both butterfly and balancing valve is used to control the flow. Butterfly valve is only the open close type, whereas balancing valve has actuator into it and controls the flow based on exact requirement automatically.
Yes, that is the difference. For on-off operation, we use the butterfly valves, and for flow control application, we use the balancing valves.
Sure, thank you, sir. There was one more question. What is the audit cost that you perform? And
Yeah, it is answered by Dina, and that is
Yes, yes.
15,000
It's about
rupees per day.
15,000 per day. Yeah, sure. I think those were all the questions. I thought in the interest of others, I'll
Okay.
cover these two questions also. You can proceed further. Yeah.
Frederick, can you hear me? Hello?
Frederick, sir, are you there?
I think he need to unmute.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Now, could you able to hear me?
Yeah.
Are you?
Give me 2 minutes. I will start your presentation.
Yeah, please.
Sure. In the meantime, members, if you have any more questions, do post it on the chat window, or you can in fact use the raise hand option. I'll call out your name and you can take up this interaction with the keynote presenter. So there is one question from Mr. Sharanam Baswa. So we have a 55-meter building height, hydro-pneumatic
Okay.
ground force pumps, 3 into 15 kilowatt installed at basement 2, above 8th floor, not getting 6 kg pressure, design set point 6 kg at PLC. So what can be the reason that you are not able to achieve that required pressure?
Can you repeat again?
So they have a 55-meter building height and hydro-pneumatic pumps of 3 into 15 kilowatts have been installed at basement 2.
Okay.
And above 8th floor, they're not getting 6 kg pressure, though the design set point in PLC is 6 kgs. So what can be the reason for not getting this?
Got it, sir. Sir, as discussed in head calculations, total head is nothing but static head plus dynamic head. So our static head is 55 meters, that is fixed. And also we need to take into account dynamic head. And then we need to calculate the total head. And in this case, what might be happening? The pump is operating at 60 meters head only. So the dynamic frictional losses would be more in the pipeline, and that may be the possible reason for not getting the flow at the topmost floors. So in that case, we may need to install the booster pump in between so that we can pass the flow to the topmost floor.
So thank you for that response, sir. So and there's one more question from Monisha, who's asking how cavitation can be identified in the pump.
Just install the compound pressure gauge at pump suction, and if it is this is only for the positive suction condition. No? Install the compound pressure gauge at pump suction, and if it is showing negative pressure, the pump is cavitating. Also, some abnormal noise comes from the pump and pump temperature. If we touch a pump surface, the pump temperature also is higher than the ambient temperature. So that are the indications we can check for the pump cavitation.
Thank you, sir. So while we wait for more questions, members, we have also posted, Nagraj sir has posted a link for the feedback of today's webinar. Do fill up the feedback form while we proceed further and we take up more questions. Over to you, Frederick sir, for the presentation on this particular plumbing solution.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Maruti, I'm audible?
Yeah.
Maruti, could you change that slide? So, sir, of course, good evening all. This is Frederick from Grundfos Pumps. Of course, Maruti, thanks for inlight on pump basics. It really refreshing us. Probably I'll be just covering another 10 minutes on the what is a new concept in our hydro-pneumatic system. Of course, this particular chapter, it is all very familiar to all of us, but even would like to again emphasize what are the new updates are coming up in the hydro-pneumatic system. That's what the intention of this 10 minutes, next 10 minutes. So I just would like to, before going into that, what are the common issues we will be facing when hydro-pneumatic system in the facility? So main important thing, there is a huge variation in the water consumption pattern. That can be like a sudden surge in the water demand, or there will be a sudden reduction in the water demand. That could be like a lot of more fluctuation in the entire water consumption pattern. That's one of the key issue. Another thing, it will be like underperformance, or sometimes it will be little over design above our requirement. This is one of the again a major issue we will be facing, under design or over design at that site. Then again, sometimes there may not be not getting an optimal comfort Maybe we will be having a certain issue with that hot water, cold water mixing. Some of the basic issues, maybe that pressure will be very less. The systems are running continuously. Some of the common running issue on the hydropneumatic system. Another on the overall aspects, that efficiency. The efficiency again, overall our intention to ensure that systems running at a better efficiency point. Next slide.
Yeah.
When we discussing on the hydropneumatic system, we are not discussing only on the like a pump alone or motor alone or whether VFD alone. So we are talking about the overall system efficiency. That's what more important here. Of course, Maruti has covered what are the importance of that efficiency factor. Your pumps also should be on the should ensure that pumps are operating at a higher efficiency point. Your motor efficiency should be on the higher side. To ensure that your overall efficiency of the system, we are getting a better overall system efficiency. Not only pump and motor, again, other critical factor here, your speed control, whether what kind of a VFD we are using, whether do we have any losses in the VFD. Of course, we are having a VFD to have a better energy saving. Are we really getting that efficiency, better efficiency because of that VFD operation? Again, what are the control function it is going to help us to get a better efficiency of the system. So these are some of the key factors to ensure the overall system efficiency in the water supply. Next slide. So what we are now, what we knew in our latest hydropneumatic system. So now we are come up with the hydropneumatic systems with the IE5 motor. So IE5 motor, of course, earlier trend, we used to have a term efficiency 1 motor, efficiency 2, efficiency 3. That's a term we have used earlier when we discussing on the efficiency class of a motor. Now the complete term, it changed by the standards. It's called like IE3, IE4, IE5. That's an equivalent efficiency classes term. When now we started to using our IE5 efficiency motor in our hydropneumatic system, probably I'll give a little brief on the what we are having in that. Go to that next slide. Can you go to that next one? Yeah. When we talk about our conventional induction motor, even we are having an IE3 motor. IE3 motor, if you look at our Bureau of Energy Standard, it is falling under the 3-star rating. So IE3, it is normally be falling under 3-star rating as per the Bureau of Energy Efficiency Standard. But when that same pump is going to be run with the external VFD, when running with that external VFD, obviously that there is a possibility when the pumps running at a partial load factor, whether it's going to run at a 75% load or on a 50% load, that efficiency, there will be a drop in the efficiency. That is what that standards are saying. Maybe this is available, probably if you read that point number, the standard describe in general efficiency of a motor at a high maximum when running at a full speed. As VFD is used, vary the speed of the motor when the motor is operated at a reduced speed. That motor delivers a lesser efficiency. When it is going to be connected with that external drive, there could be a possibility to drop in the output of efficiency factor. So, so obviously, if you are having a IE3 motor with that external drive, it may be at partial load, the pump will be delivering only the equivalent of IE2 efficiency. So when come up with that higher efficiency motor, if you're talking about IE3 or IE4 or IE5 efficiency motor, so IE5 efficiency, what is the design side we are having to eliminate this particular issue? Can you go to that next one? So now when we comes to an IE5, in IE5 motors, we are using a permanent magnet construction. So in a permanent magnet construction, there are two types. One surface mounted permanent magnet, another one it's a interior permanent magnet. So in our Grundfos IE5 motor, we are using a interior permanent magnet motors. So in that case, all the permanent magnets are embedded in inside the rotor itself. So it will give a better mechanical stability for this particular normally since this normally all the permanent magnet motors, it's going to run at a higher speed when comparing with that our induction motors. Normally induction motors as a synchronized speed, it will be 3000 rpm. When it comes to a permanent magnet motor, it may go to 4000 rpm or 4500 rpm, depends upon the design factor. So that's the reason we have to ensure that better mechanical stability. To ensuring that mechanical stability, we have the embedded magnet construction in our IE5 motor. Of course, some of the key factors we made in a comparison like a size, efficiency, motor cost, mechanical robustness, like a field weakening, torque generation. So normally that IE5 permanent magnet motor, it's performing better than our induction motor concept. Can you go to the next one? So in Grundfos, we come up with that IE5 motor. So IE5 motor, we developed up to 11 kilowatt. So normally our most of the water supply application will be with our general observation, most of our water supply application, it is falling below 11 kilowatt and below. Even if you talk about a water transfer application or any feed pump application or using a high pressure pump in RO plant, or a hydropneumatic system, all the pumps, it will be falling unless otherwise it's like a very huge campus or on a kind of a township project. Otherwise, our requirement, it will be falling below 11 kilowatt. So when we go with that up to 11 kilowatt, now we are having our IE5 motors. Of course, we are in a process of developing IE5 motors for the higher kilowatt too. So which will be going to support us more for the our air conditioning application too. Of course, still we can use our IE5 motor for the air conditioning application where you are having a tertiary pump, or if you're having a pumps at the AHU unit, or if you're having a inline booster kind of thing in the air conditioning circuit, there we can have a IE5 motor for that particular thing. So what is the key advantage when we going with that IE5 motors? Main important factor is you will be having a better partial load efficiency. So when 100% efficiency, IE5, it will be delivering us some amount of efficiency value. When it comes to a 75%, 50%, so without compromising on the loss side, any losses, we are getting a better efficiency when comparing with that IE3 or IE4 motors. So that's an advantage. So here it is a permanent magnet motor. So the VFD parts also, it will be integrated part. So whatever we are declaring like as output efficiency, that exact output efficiency we will be getting. Suppose if you are using any external VFD, suppose as a motor manufacturer, they are declaring as some amount of efficiency. Say I have a 11 kilowatt motor. 11 kilowatt motor, they are declaring as a 90.2% is my efficiency. When that particular motor, if I am going to connect with that external drive, obviously that drive will be having some amount of losses. When that particular motor is running at a partial load, then obviously that efficiency of the motor will be coming down. So, but in our IE5 cases, it will be an integrated part. Your motor and the our VFD, it will be integrated part. It's a permanent magnet construction. So that whatever we are declaring that motor efficiency, it's a overall overall efficiency of the IE5 motor. Can you go to the next one? So we made an energy index with our existing pumps itself, existing our motors itself. When you're having our hydropneumatic system with the IE2 motors, IE2 motor with the external drive, IE2 with the IE3 with the IE3 motors. When the IE5 motors, what will be the induction level? That's with the various various side study, we come up with that. We will be having a 71% energy index when comparing with that your IE2 motor. So normally IE2 motor will be falling under the as per the Bureau of Energy Standard, it will be falling under the 2-star rating. IE5 motor will be falling at a rating of 5-star rating as per the BEE standards. Can you go to that next one? Okay, so when we discussing on the IE5 motors, so whether that motor alone, that's what we discussed. So in what way the control function is going to help us having a better energy saving? Can you go to that next one? Okay, so normally our hydropneumatic system, of course, we will be using a term called as a constant pressure. So normally, why we are having hydropneumatics are getting in a constant pressure in the utility side. So that's a answer we will be giving to everyone. So, but what are the disadvantage when with that constant pressure? You will be getting a excess pressure in the pipeline. So when having excess pressure, there could be a leakages. Then pipe breakages can happen. Because of excess pressure, you will be energy saving also will be increasing, it creating a more maintenance aspects. So in the new generation system, how we are addressing this issue? Can you move to the next one? So instead of referring as a proportional pressure control, we are having instead of saying it's a constant pressure control, now we have come up with a called a proportional pressure control. In a proportional pressure control, we are taking a reference your flow and your operating pressure. When we having a both reference, then still we can have a better control of the system. So how we are getting a more control on the system? So normally when calculating a system operating head, you will be considering these are the three factors. What is your static head, your pressure at the farthest point, and the friction losses in the pipeline. So here your static head and the required pressure at the farthest point, it's in a constant. We cannot vary that these two values. Only variable value here, the pressure loss due to your friction losses in the pipeline. So when the flow is varying, so normally when hydropneumatic, it is for the variable load. So when the flow is varying, when it comes to a 100% load or 50% load, obviously our friction loss, when there is a reduction in the flow, that our friction loss component also, friction loss factor components also it reducing. So how to when having the better control system, we will be measuring that arithmetic value. It will be programmed in our controller. So we will be already we are having the flow reference. With that flow reference, we can able to calculate the friction losses of your system. So then automatically, instead of maintaining a constant pressure, that your curve itself, it will be getting shifted to lesser operating pressure based on your flow rate. So when that instead of maintaining a higher pressure, you'll be whenever there is a lower flow, then obviously your pressure also will come down. So this will be helping us to avoiding a continuous stress on your pipeline. Otherwise, will be your system. So even nowadays, hydropneumatic systems are designed for very high pressure, high rise building. Your system will be highly pressurized. Your pipelines are it will be stressed with the higher pressure, so that it lead to leakages or breakages in the pipeline. Wherever you are having a weak joint, coil, gaskets, other thing, it will be get broken. So avoiding that, to avoid that, we have the functionality called pressure proportional pressure control function. So probably we may need to little our mindset has to go from the proportional pressure control. Instead of constant pressure control, we may need to say a proportional pressure control, which will give a better control in the system. Next slide. So then another important thing, new updation in the hydropneumatic, we are having a pilot pump arrangement. So why we need to have this pilot pump arrangement? Of course, we discussed whether we should have a single pump arrangement, 2 pump arrangement, 3 pump. So when we having a parallel operation, when we designing a system for a parallel condition, it is all to decided based on your how it's your load side. So whether you're having a very variable load, whether it is in a hotel, hospital, or an airport project, or in a various kind of an industry, depends upon your consumption side. We need to decide how many number of pumps going to be in a parallel condition. So in that case, so normally when you are having a when you're having a very sorry, excuse me. When you are having a very variable load in the system side, so then obviously when that system say if it is just for an example, it's an airport only on the peak time you will be having a maximum water consumption whenever that airport whenever the flight or landing of or when take off, maximum people will be utilizing your utility area. Otherwise, other time it will be having a very lesser water consumption. It may comes below the 25% of your designed capacity. So to take care of whenever the systems are, whenever the flow rate is going below than your 25% of design capacity, we can have this pilot pump to take care of your minimum requirement. So in that case, you will be still ensuring that we'll be getting a better system efficiency, because suppose even though if you are operating a pump in a VFD, when that load it is go below than 25%, our efficiency of the pump or overall efficiency of the system will come down. To eliminate that issue, we can have that pilot pump. There is a reduction in the flow rate below 25%. automatically that requirement, it will be shifted to pilot pump to take care of the minimum flow requirement. Still people will be having a thought, sir, I'm already having a pressure tank. So pressure tank is going to be pressure tank when come into a picture, when that load it is go below 2% or 1%, very, very minimum requirement, only that to serve the very, very minimum nominal minimum requirement to the pressure tank, it will be come into an operation. Otherwise, your pump will be keep on running. So to avoid that, we can have this pilot pump to improve the system efficiency. Move to next one. Next slide, please. So we just made an energy analysis for the pilot pump arrangement. With the even with that our same existing arrangement, when having a single VFD arrangement, having a system with the multiple VFD, multiple VFD with a jockey pump arrangement, multiple VFD with that including our proportional pressure control. So how much energy can be saved from that? So when comparing with that our conventional single VFD hydropneumatic system, we can have a at least average we can have a 20% of better energy saving, 25% saving from the our normal conventional hydropneumatic system. That's a conclusion we taken from our studies. Can you move to the next one? I think just for again an overview. Of course, to ensure that overall system efficiency, we are now come up with that IE5 motor, which will be delivering a better efficiency in the partial load. Then again a proportional control mode, which will give a better efficiency of the system. Other control function will be ensuring the to system operate at a best efficiency point. Thank you. Maruti, thank you from my end. That's my last slide. Any questions?
Thank you, Frederick sir and Maruti sir for that wonderful presentations. So can we move on to Q&A session then, if your presentations are over?
Yeah. Yes, sure.
Okay, sure. Great. I think there are a couple of questions in the chat window. So members, while we continue with Q&A, kindly click on the feedback link that has been just posted on the chat window, and keep filling the feedback form while we address the questions. So in the meantime, let me read out some of the questions. So this question is from Jerome sir again. Is there a difference in design of pump or motor used with VFD and without VFD? So can you just throw some light on that, sir?
Yeah. Of course, there is a difference in the motor design when using with VFD and without VFD, because normally when that pumps are going to run at a lower frequency level. So if it is running a system at a very lower efficiency, 30% of frequency or below 30% of frequency, obviously normal motors, if it is not a VFD compatible motor, then that your harmonic effect will be very on the higher side. So because of that losses and that harmonic effect, that motor temperature will increase. When if you are running at a non-compatible VFD compatible motor, running with that lower RPM, it may lead to motor failure. So we should have a VFD compatible motor for the VFD operation. So there are normally when make key difference at the insulation side, there is a difference. Your bearing designs, it slightly differ for a VFD operation pump and non-VFD operation pump. And the another important thing, your insulation motor insulation part also will differ, sir.
Sure, thank you so much for the clarification, sir. So with that, I think there is one more question from Mr. Patel. So is there any effect of age over this permanent magnets in the motors?
It may not probably it may not be, sir. Of course, we developed a product. Probably it's practically a right question. That could be even it will be applicable for even our normal induction motors too. Of course, it's a aging factor for any electrical property components. It will be having an aging factor. Similar way, magnets also will be having that factor intention. Probably, but normally as a manufacturer, we are giving an assurance, manufacturing assurance for 10 years operational period. But you're correct, sir. There could be a aging factor. There will be a aging factor in any electrical components. It can be on the stator side or on that rotor side.
Thank you, sir. I think that's the question which we had. And there is one more question from Mr. Palani. For HNS pump, if the pressure transducer has failed, any other alternate option is available to control the pump speed?
Sure, sir. So we have an option in our new gen hydropneumatic system. So that's called a redundant primary sensors arrangement. So you will be having a two pressure sensor. It will be connected in parallel. So if in case of normally both sensor will be giving an input to our controller. So when there is a value difference, there is a input value difference in the sensor, both sensor, if it is more than 10%, immediately there will be an alarm will come in. There is a warning will be coming in the system. So in case of any failure of, so still both sensor will be giving a signal to our controller. So in case if any one sensor get failed, still you will be continues to get a signal from the another sensor with the warning. So this redundant primary sensor arrangement, it is available, sir. There is a one more concept called like a having a primary sensor at the farthest point. There will be one sensor at the near to the system itself on the discharge header itself. One more sensor can be located at your farthest load side. So this is also one new concept. It is available our new gensets, a new generation of hydropneumatic. Even your any one of sensor get failed, that signal will be taken from the other sensor. That safety precaution, the safety necessary safety precautions, it's available in our new gen hydropneumatic systems.
Thank you so much, sir. I think those were all the questions. There is one, I think, few more questions. Let me read out for you. So there's again a question from Jerome, sir. Is your new IE5, can they be repaired if there is a failure in motor or control circuit?
Yes, sir. It can be repairable. On the electronic side, suppose if you're talking on your inverter circuit, it like our computers. So wherever if you have a problem with your motherboard or your power supply card or on an inverter side or in a rectifier side, so that card alone can be replaced on the electronic front. If any problem on the induction motors on the stator side, that only that stator winding can be a failure, so that can be repaired at our service centers.
Thank you, sir. Next question is from Srinivasan, sir. So what is the cost comparison between IE3 induction motor with external VFD and IE5 permanent magnet motor with VFD, say capacity of 7.5 kilowatts?
Yes, sir. So I'll just connecting with that price index. Say if I'm having a IE3 motor with that external drive, it is in 100 rupees. So my IE5 motor with that inbuilt drive with that permanent magnet, it will be 105 rupees. Sir. So that's a price index when come up with that when talking about on a IE5 motors.
So, thank you, sir. So that's only 5%.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Thank you for that response, sir. So members, any more questions? You can kindly post your questions on the chat window. You can also use the raise hand option. We would be glad to unmute you and you can interact with the keynote presenters. Of course, our first preference is that you ask direct questions by unmuting yourself. So I can unmute you. Please raise your hands if you have any questions.
Shravan, I have received 2 questions. Can I proceed?
Yes, please proceed.
Okay. See, in a factory where 30 to 40 pumps are there, how many days it will take to get an audit done?
Audit on the pumps. Okay. Sir, generally in a day we do 6 to 8 pumps measurement per day. Those are
6 to 8 pumps. So you will take 5 days to audit 40 pumps, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
The second question what I have received is retrofit option available for the existing hydropneumatic system to upgrade to IE5 system?
Yes.
Sir, we can do that, sir. We can do that. We can replace the existing IE3 motor with that IE5 motor with the modifications. It is possible. Probably we will involve our service team for that kind of an activity, sir. It is possible, sir.
Okay. In that case, so what happened to the existing motor? Will you take it as at cost?
We may not be. Maruti, can you answer to that? Do we have any buyback policy
option.
In our
buyback option?
No. As a Grundfos, we don't have buyback policy.
But definitely we can provide on a better payback time period. So normally when if you are upgrading with that IE5, if you really look at your payback period, it will be less than a year, sir. We had a similar less than a year. We did this experiment for the various sites in the commercial building. When comparing with that your IE5, whatever your extra cost you are spending, so that it can be on the IE5. Sorry, on the
Sir,
within
do
a
you
year
have
limit.
a case study on upgradation of these things? I mean,
we have case studies, sir. We have case study.
Okay,
Probably,
so can you please present it in the next our next presentation? What we have scheduled now?
We'll do that, sir. We'll do that.
Okay, thank you, sir. Because this is very important question. What he is asked. Probably people may think of upgrading to IE5. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Technically, it is possible, sir.
Yeah,
thank you for those questions, sir, and thanks for those responses. I think there's one question again similar to the previous one. So Palani sir is requesting you to share technical specifications and cost difference, a comparison between IE1 to IE5. So Palani sir request you to fill in the feedback form with this question, and definitely we would request our keynote presenters to share the information to you, sir. Thank you so much. So with that, we will conclude the session. Then Murugesan sir, I think we are done with all the questions.
Yeah, Shravan, I mean, the final note with Frederick sir on the.
Sure, sir. Thank you, sir. I think just before that, there's one hand raised, Srinivasan sir. So
Yeah, please
can you please unmute yourself and proceed with the question, sir?
Thank you. It is not a question, it is a commentary. Can I give one comment?
Yes, sir. Maybe in the feedback session, sir, if you don't mind.
No, I would like everybody to hear this.
Sure, sure. In the feedback session, sir, after vote of thanks. Okay.
After vote of thanks. Okay, yes. Okay, yeah.
Thank you, sir. Murugesan sir, then over to you, or Maruti and Frederick sir, over to you for closing comments, and then we can proceed with vote of thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for this wonderful opportunity given to Grundfos team. Sir, we have shared a small feedback link in the chat box. Probably that will help us to get an input from your side wherever we can able to support you on your ongoing operational sites. I just want to give this inputs from my side.
Sir, Frederick sir, anyway, we are getting your feedback. Okay.
Oh, is it, sir?
That
okay.
will be shared with you anyway. Right.
Perfect, sir. Perfect, sir. Perfect, sir.
Right, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think over to you, Murugesan sir, for your vote of thanks.
Frederick sir, as well as Mr. Maruti, it was a very good presentation with lot of technical points what you have brought into this webinar, and thanks for that. Thanks for your wonderful effort to make it happen with a very successful note. Thanks to Mr. Manu as well as Mr. Gopinath for your cooperation to make it happen in such a wonderful presentation today. Thanks to, as usual, thanks to Mr. Nagaraj as well as Mr. Shravan for your cooperation to make it happen. Thanks to all the participants also for your effort to make this webinar as a wonderful session. Thanks to all. Over to you, Shravan.
Thank you so much, sir. Thanks for the vote of thanks. So with that, members, we conclude the official session. So over to you, Srinivasan sir, for your comments.
Yeah, what I thought was about the buyback. See, this is a question which people normally ask. What we are trying, all of us who talk about energy efficiency, is a life cycle cost approach where the end of cycle is retiring the asset. When an asset has been identified as inefficient and therefore worthy of being replaced with a higher efficiency system, why bother too much about the old asset? It has to be retired. It has to be retired in such a way that it does not get back into the system again, anywhere. So it has to be sort of, committed to earth or whatever is the method that is prescribed for removing the old asset. So I am not very happy about questions involving buyback arrangement.
Sir, generally, our people will ask a similar question anywhere if you go.
Yeah. This question is asked. So
Yeah.
I'm taking leaf out of what questions I have also received. Buyback is not such a great idea.
Sir, it's not great idea, but management will ask, no, what will happen to your
So scrap.
Yeah,
There is a scrap
scrap.
value, scrap it. Yeah.
selling
Don't
selling
expect the
in
company
the
to buy back.
selling
Absolutely,
the motors or pumps at a
Yeah.
scrap rate, no, management will not agree.
No, that's okay.
Absolutely, sir. I
It
think,
is inefficient anyway. So that is the point I'm trying to make.
Exactly. Well said, sir. Well said. I think what you said is very true. And that coming from a motor expert who have interacted with almost millions of
Absolutely,
industries, I could say.
with 40 years experience in the field.
Absolutely. So, Grundfos team, Srinivasan sir is also one of our keynote presenters and an expert of motors. And this particular reinforcing of thought of retiring of motors is not ideal in terms of buyback. I think that's a very positive note. So, with that, we officially conclude today's session, members, and looking forward for your participation in further webinars. Do check out expo.techspert.com and check out the webinars which are forthcoming. Register for the ones which are interesting for you. Thank you so much. Yeah.